The Code Council wants members to understand the American Rescue Plan and how to unlock this unprecedented opportunity.
The American Rescue Plan is COVID-19 pandemic response legislation that was signed into law in March of this year. It has $350 billion for state and local governments. It's allocated to counties of any population size, large municipalities, small municipalities.
The plan provides $65.1 billion to counties, $45.6 billion to large municipalities, and $19.5 billion to municipalities with less than 50,000 people.
It's an unprecedented amount of resources that is going to state and local governments with, I would also say, an unprecedented amount of flexibility. So there's no local cost share that's typically required in state and local grant programs, and the order of magnitude of resources provided is also really unique. The pandemic was extremely impactful on building fire prevention departments around the country. We surveyed our membership, we got over 2,000 responses, and this was at a couple points during the pandemic, and about 5 in 10 departments didn't have the capability to conduct critical aspects of their work virtually. The other thing that we found is that departments across the country, about 6 in 10, had either experienced budget cuts already or anticipated budget cuts. And that affects their operations and their staff. So the American Rescue Plan addresses Code Department, Fire Prevention Office needs in a couple different ways. The plan is focused on facilitating the pandemic response as well as responding to negative impacts from the pandemic. And what that means for code departments is it can help departments address their virtual capability needs, and it can also help them address staffing shortfalls or curtailment in operations.
A comparison between this year's American Rescue Plan and last year's CARES Act shows a striking difference in the resources available.
The CARES Act provided $150 billion. The American Rescue Plan provides $350 billion. The CARES Act also focused money to states and to governments over 500,000 in population. The American Rescue Plan sets aside funding for jurisdictions under 50,000 and over 50,000, counties of all different sizes, and they are insured that money. So under the CARES Act, it would be up to a state to determine how the dollars that state received would or would not make it down to local governments. Under the American Rescue Plan, that funding is guaranteed, and states also don't have the ability to add additional restrictions on how local governments can spend that money. Another really important distinction is that the American Rescue Plan provides departments with resources to rehire staff, as well as to restore department operations back to pre-pandemic levels.
It's important that building department officials make their cases to the appropriate local agencies to secure funding from the American Rescue Plan.
Once local governments receive their funding, it's their decision on how that's spent, as long as it's facilitating their response to the pandemic or the negative economic impacts from the pandemic. According to the Department of Homeland Security in every state, code departments are essential workers that are critical to our pandemic response. And we're encouraging those governments to invest in their building departments because those building departments are vital to communities' pandemic response, to community life safety and public health, to disaster mitigation within communities and disaster response, as well as facilitating the construction that we need now and the construction that we'll need to facilitate our economic recovery.
The Code Council advises members to act quickly on this unique funding opportunity.
Communities will have until the end of 2024 to spend their American Rescue Plan funding. But that's not to say that they should wait until then to do that. And that's because there have been several attempts so far to claw back that funding from communities. So our advice to governments of all sizes and all types is to utilize the funding they've received as expeditiously as possible. The American Rescue Plan provides an unprecedented amount of resources to governments of all types and all sizes. Our message to you, our members, is to take advantage of these resources. Be an advocate for your department. Ensure that you're leveraging this opportunity to the greatest possible extent.
To learn more about the American Rescue Plan, go to our Coronavirus Response Center at iccsafe.org/COVID-resources-advocacy. There, you can access a number of tools including fact sheets, talking points, webinars, and state-by-state contacts for your government relations staff liaison.